Dear learners, today we will be discussing on perspectives and approaches to development. The contents that we will be covering today are the classical theory of development, the Marxian theory of development, Schumpeter's theory of development, stage theory of growth, theory of balanced growth, theory of unbalanced growth, dualism and development, dependency theory of development, and Mahatma Gandhi and development. Coming to the classical theory of economic growth and development, three theories of economic growth that are based on classical school of thought are the optimistic theory by Adam Smith, the pessimistic theory by Ricardo and Malthus, and the moderate theory by J.S. Mill. Coming to the first one, that is the optimistic theory by Adam Smith. Adam Smith was the first to emphasize on the role of the nature in process of economic development and less state interference in economic activities. For him, capital accumulation for the industrial development is the result of surplus revenue or cost accruing to the producers. According to him, the surplus is directly related to productivity of labor. Smith's division of labor meant assigning different tasks of a production process to different laborers. The division of labor depends upon the extent of market. Related to this is his concept of specialization of labor. According to him, labor acquires dexterity or skill when he works on a particular job over a period of time. The specialization increases the productivity of labor and results in time saving in production process and the economy of use of resources and raw material in production process. Large profits enhance larger capital accumulation. Smith emphasized the role of technological development, to which he was witness due to industrial revolution taking place in England and other countries of Europe. Adequate capital accumulation is the very condition of technological development, and there is little role of wages influencing the process of development. Coming to the second theory, pessimistic theory by Ricardo. Some of the salient features of his theory of development are: Ricardo believed in free enterprise economy with little state interference in economic system. He considered economy mainly consisting of industrial sector, which is the dynamic sector with continuous technological improvements, higher factor productivity, etc., and the agricultural sector where technology remains static. Industry is responsible for surplus and leads to larger capital accumulation. Capital accumulation promotes technological development. The agricultural sector, on the other hand, was the lagging sector. Surplus in agriculture did not result in capital accumulation to be utilized for further development of the economy. Ricardo developed the theory of rent, which states that as the demand for corn increases, more and more inferior quality of land is brought under cultivation, whose yield is lower than the previous superior quality land, and the difference between the yields on the two qualities of land is appropriated by the landlords as rent. The classical economists generally assume that the real wages in economy settle in the long run around the subsistence wage. This affords the labor class to live in reasonable comfort, and there is no clash between the capitalists or the producers and the wage earners. In Ricardian theory of development, as the time passes, the share of rent in national output increases, wage remains constant, and profit is gradually squeezed to a level where only replacement of capital is possible. In this state, no new investment takes place. Ricardo calls this state of affairs as the stationary state. When the economy reaches this state of stationary stage, new economic activities in industrial sector come to a halt. The economy stops growing and expanding. Economic activities merely repeat themselves, and Ricardo pessimistically concludes that with regard to future of capitalist economy as it embarks on the path of development, J.S. Mill's theory of development, the capitalist society will definitely experience near zero rate of profit, which will cause the stationary state to exist. This state will be a state of contentment, of great achievement, as by the time economy will experience stationary state, it would have reached full employment, where labor will enjoy comfortable real wages, and the productive activities of the economy would have expanded vastly. With no economic dissatisfaction, the society will strive and attain perfection in various forms of arts like the literary art, painting, music, and other higher forms of learning, and would think about ethics, philosophy behind welfare, and such higher pursuits of knowledge. Therefore, he argued that there is a reason to be satisfied with capitalist development and no reason to be pessimistic about the future of the capitalist society. Now coming to the Marxian philosophy. The constituents of Marxian philosophy are dialectical materialism and historical materialism. Now, what is dialectical materialism? Any finite concept, when considered as a predicate of reality or thesis, will lead to its opposite, that is called the antithesis. Society moves to a third stage called synthesis, which reconciles the mutually opposed concepts and provides a better description of reality. Coming to the historical materialism, the subject of historical materialism includes the study of the mode of production, the dialectics of mode of production, the historical evolution of society. The mode of production. The mode of production of wealth is the determining factor of social development. Mode of production has two aspects: the forces of production and the relations of production. Now, the forces of production consists of labor, which is the productive human activity, the object of labor, which are the things to which the human labor is applied, for example, the raw materials, and the means of labor, which are the things used by man to act upon the object of labor, for example, the tools. The second part is relations of production. The production relations are based on the form of ownership of means of production. The second part is the dialectics of modes of production. Working of the mode of production is governed by three laws. The first one is the law of utility. The productive forces and the production relations taken together determine the mode of production of material wealth. They are linked by an inner unity, that is, specific level of productive forces require specific level of relations. Second is the law of correspondence. The law of correspondence states that production relations tend to correspond to productive forces. The changes in the productive forces induce adjustment in the production relations. The third one is the law of conflict. This law states that conflict stems from the intrinsic nature of two sides of modes of production, that is, the forces of production and the relations of production. This conflict brings about development in the mode of production. Now coming to the third part, that is the historical evolution of society. According to him, there are 5 different stages of social evolution. The first stage is of primitive communism. The second one is of slavery. Third one is feudalism. Fourth one is capitalism. And finally, it all leads to socialism. The history of society consists of the history of sequence of socio-economic formations. Now coming to the Marxian economic system. The Marxian economic system comprises of a few theories. Let us look at them one by one. The first one is the theory of capital development. Some of the salient features of this theory are: Marx considers the future progress of an industrially advanced economy, such as some of the European economies at his time. Marx assumes technological development will be autonomous in nature, and each technological development is more capital intensive than its predecessor. Deliberately or otherwise, the capitalists always aim and succeed in replacing labor by capital. The wage of labor are fixed not by custom or historical relations or reasons, but by relative weight of unemployed population. Marx contends profit and more profit is the mantra for capitalism. Producers organize themselves to earn profits and viciously compete with each other to earn more profits. In order to pursue larger profits, producers try to appropriate as much surplus as is possible in the process of production. The second one is the theory of surplus value. Labor power has the unique characteristic of being capable of producing more than its own value when it is put to productive use. The excess of value produced by labor power over its own value is called the surplus value. The aim of capitalists is always to increase this surplus value. The surplus value refers to the extra labor of the worker for which he receives nothing from the producer or the employer. It is appropriated by the capitalists, and this implies exploitation of labor. Marx said that capitalists make them work for 12 hours a day but pay them only $5, thus exploiting the laborers and extracting the surplus value or profit by exploiting the workers. The producers try to increase the rate of exploitation by making labor work for longer day or by hiring women and children to do the same work by paying them less because of their physical capacities. These are short-term measures. In the long run, the rate of exploitation is pushed by using more capital and less labor. Third one is that as development proceeds and producers are forced to compete for larger profits, the use of fixed capital relative to total labor employed rises. Marx calls this ratio organic composition of labor. As productive processes are necessarily becoming more capital intensive, more and more labor is being displaced. Hence, there is a tendency for unemployment to rise. Marx called this unemployed pool of industrial reserve army, which goes on increasing. It is the industrial reserve army which does not allow the real wages to rise above the subsistence level, and it is responsible for exploitation of labor. Now, the third law is the immutable laws of development. Based on the above analysis, Marx argued that each capitalist society in process of development experiences the growth in abject poverty of masses because of extreme exploitation of labor class. A sustained rise in organic composition of capital due to technology, which also increases competition among the capitalists. And eventually, in capitalist society, the rate of profit will decline to a very low level. According to Marx, these three tendencies are the causes of crisis of capitalism. The misery and squalor of the society increases, and heightened competition among the capitalists create distrust among them. Marx gave the call to labor class to overthrow violently this iniquitous system. Marx argues that the capitalist class perishes and the proletariat emerges victorious. All the means of production are owned by the state, and the state of socialism is arrived. Coming to the next law, the next theory, that is the Schumpeter's theory. The key features of Schumpeter's theory of economic development are circular flow, innovation, role of entrepreneurs, role of profit, cyclical development process, and the decay of capitalism. The first one is circular flow. The economic activities are essentially repetitive and subject to change in routine manner. Development begins with breaking up the circular flow by the innovative entrepreneurs with an innovation in the form of a new product. The second one is innovation. Innovation is defined as a change in existing production system to be introduced by the entrepreneur with a view to make profits and reduce costs. And innovation can be a new good, a new method of production, new market, new source of supply of raw materials, etc. The development process remains dynamic and vibrant because of innovations. The role of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the central figure in Schumpeter's theory of economic development. They are not the capitalists, rather they work under the capitalists. The capitalists furnish the funds while the entrepreneurs direct the use of these funds. The two things which are critical to the functioning of entrepreneur to bring economic development are technical know-how and capital resources. The next one is role of profit. Profit is the main motivating factor for entrepreneur to go for innovation. Profits arise due to dynamic changes resulting from an innovation. They continue to exist till the innovation becomes general. And the fifth one is the cyclical process of development. Schumpeter regards economic development as a dynamic, discontinuous and cyclical process. His concept of creative destruction, where old economic structures of the society are being continuously destroyed and the new structures are being continuously created, reveals the cyclical nature of development. The last one is the decay of capitalism. The capitalism will flourish as long as capitalists earn profit and innovation continues, and the entrepreneurs are agile and continue innovation. Schumpeter has cited three reasons for the downfall of capitalism. The first one is the obsolescence of entrepreneurial functions. Second is destruction of institutional frameworks of capitalists. And the third is political majorities vote for creation of a welfare state. The next one is Rostov's stages of growth. Rostov described 5 ideal types of stages through which all societies pass. The first one is the traditional society, which has more than 75% of the population engaged in food production. The political power is in the hands of landowners or a central authority supported by the army and the civil servants. The second one is the transitional stage, which creates the preconditions for takeoff by bringing about radical changes in non-industrial sector. Export of raw materials gain momentum, a new class of businessmen emerges, and the idea of economic progress coming from outside spreads through the elite. The third one is the takeoff stage, which brings a sharp increase in the rate of investment in the per capita output. And this is accompanied by radical changes in the production techniques. Expansion takes place in small groups of leading sectors at first, and on the social side is accompanied by domination of the modern section of society over the traditional ones. The next one is drive to maturity, which brings a spread of growth from the leading to the other sectors and a broader application of modern technology, followed by necessary changes in the society at large. The stage of high mass consumption is the next stage, wherein this is reached after attaining a certain level of national income and formulating of economic policies giving priority to increased private consumption. Coming to the next theory, that is the theory of balanced growth. According to this theory, only a bundle of complementary investments realized at the same time has the chance of creating mutual demand. It encourages investments in such sectors which have a high relation between supply, purchasing power and demand, as in consumer good industry, food production, etc. The earlier versions of this theory is associated with Gunnar Myrdal and is based on a balanced package of private enterprise supporting each other's demand and supply chains. The later version is associated with Professor Rosenstein-Rodin, who advocated big push, and Harvey Leibenstein, who propagated the critical minimum effort. Both the latter ones are seen as state interventions to accelerate development process. Development is seen here as expansion of market and an increase of production, including agriculture. Coming to the next theory, that is the theory of unbalanced growth. According to Hirschman, not a balanced growth should be aimed at, but rather the existing imbalances whose symptoms are profits and losses must be maintained. This approach relies upon the input-output linkages among industries to leverage the imbalances. Thus, a push to develop consumer good industry will encourage development of industries which provide intermediate goods and basic goods, including infrastructure. Unbalanced growth can begin by basic infrastructure, which would then spur higher order goods closer to consumption. Investment should not be spread evenly, but concentrated in such projects in which they cause additional investments because of their backward and forward linkages without being too demanding on entrepreneurial abilities. The manufacturing industries and import substitutions are relevant examples here. These first investments initiate further investments which can be made by lesser entrepreneurs. The next theory is the theory of dualism and development. Development and dualism is the suppression of the traditional sector by concentrating on and expanding the modern sector over time. It is assumed that the trickle-down effect will reduce and abolish dualism. In general, agriculture has to provide the resources, labor, as well as capital for expanding the modern sector. Lewis and Feyerabend assumed that a reduction of labor force in agriculture because of the widespread disguised unemployment would not reduce agricultural production. The productive employment of these laborers in modern sector would increase the total production of the economy, and hence priority of investment in industry is necessary. However, concentration on the modern sector led to an increasing regional disparity, rural-urban migration, urban unemployment, a decrease in agricultural production, and hindrances in industrial development because of lack of purchasing power in the rural areas. The anticipated trickle-down effect hardly ever happened. Coming to the next theory, that is the dependency theory of development. The dependency theory is a body of social science theories which are predicated on the notion that resources flow from the periphery or the poor and underdeveloped states to the core of the wealthy states, enriching the latter at the expense of the former. The premises of dependency theory are as follows. Poor nations are at disadvantage in their market interactions with wealthy nations. A high proportion of the developing nations' economic activity consists of exports and imports from the developed nations. By contrast, only a small proportion of economic activity of the developed nations consists of trade with the developing nations. A developed nation trade consists mostly of either internal trade or trade with other developed nations. This asymmetry puts a poor nation in a weak bargaining position vis-a-vis a developed nation. The poor nations are mostly former colonies of the developed nations. The wealthy nations actively perpetuate a state of dependence by involving economies, media control, politics, banking and finance, education, culture, sports, and all aspects of human resource development. The wealthy nations actively counter-attempt dependent nations to resist their influences by means of trade barriers, economic sanctions, and at times with the use of military force also. The dependency theory first emerged as a reaction to liberal free trade theories in the 1950s, advocated by Raul Prebisch, whose research with the Economic Commission on Latin America suggested that decrease in wealth of poor nations coincided with increase in wealth of rich nations. Paul A. Baran developed dependency theory from a Marxian analysis. Now coming to the last, that is Mahatma Gandhi and economic development. Gandhi's thinking on economic and social issues continuously evolved over the period of India's struggle for political freedom. He realized at an early stage that India's basic problems are a creation of British policy. Gandhi advocated for rejuvenation of village industries based on ample use of labor. This would cater to local demand and provide employment and economic security. He was not anti-industry but opposed those who came in conflict with small and cottage industries. Gandhi placed greater emphasis on dignity of labor. He sought to minimize socio-economic prejudices and biases against labor. Gandhi also advocated the use of profits earned by capital for larger social benefits. He urged the capitalist to be the trustee to the nation. His advocacy for social corporate responsibility was a device to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots in dynamic framework. Gandhian concept of Ram Rajya, a utopia, was based on his concept of Gram Swaraj, a society based on the harmony of interest catering to the larger socio-economic welfare. Thus, Gandhi's economic ideas from a complete alternative to modern technology and self-interest based model of consumerism. Such economic progress is anti-nature and also destroys ecology and environment. The Western model of growth is not sustainable over a long period of time. Gandhi felt that the way out of this quagmire of blind race for material prosperity is by making villages self-sufficient through decentralization. Thus, by substituting the enlightened self-interest of the classical economists and the self-interest of capitalists like that of Karl Marx by interest of society advocated by Mahatma Gandhi, Gram Swaraj can be achieved. So to conclude, today we discussed about various theories of development, which include the classical theory of development, the Marxian theory of development, Schumpeter's theory of development. We also looked at the various stages of growth as proposed by Rostow. We looked at the theory of balanced and unbalanced growth. We looked at dualism and development, the dependency theory of development. And finally, we also looked at Mahatma Gandhi, the view of Mahatma Gandhi in terms of development and how he saw development. So that's it for today. I hope you had a good learning.